Welcome to the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about Skunk and Anansie and their record, The Painful Truth. They released that on May 23rd. This is the 7th studio album for the British rockers and their follow-up to 2016's Anarchitecture. And putting this album review together has been a really fun journey for me. I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but prior to doing this, I was not really very familiar with this band's music at all. But it's what I love about working on this channel. It gives everyone involved an opportunity to discover new bands. And I would say this particular example is another case of growing up in the 90s with limited and controlled exposure to the British music scene. Radio-friendly is not a word that I would use to describe Skunk and Anansie, and I can see where the powers that be preferred kids like me to hear the likes of Radiohead and Blur and Oasis, despite those bands pushing boundaries from time to time. The sound of Skunk and Anansie, though, is loud and raw and in your face, with lyrics from Skin that are deliberate in their ability to pull the listener from their comfort zone and to see the world for what it really is. And this is a band with a great soft side too, and I love that they've never shied away from their propensity to balladry. I think it's rather unfortunate that they haven't seen more commercial success in the States, because there has been a fascinating arc in the sound of this band over the years, with early records like Paranoid and Sunburnt and Stush that employ a heavy, hard-hitting rock and roll feel that's complemented by nu metal and grunge as well. With their third record, Post-Orgasmic Chill, I'd argue that there's many of the elements that I just mentioned at work on that record, but overall it feels more accessible. And I think there's more influences of trip-hop and electronica driving that record that remind me of acts like Portishead, Bjork, and with the balladry, even at times, Annie Lennox. Honestly, it reminds me of the shift that Incubus made when they released Make Yourself. There's just more of a direct alternative rock sound that is driving their style. And with almost a decade between this record and the last, I would say The Painful Truth finds this band continuing to evolve their sound, and for the most part, it's effective. I can see with the last three efforts how fans of the band may have been a little apprehensive going into this one, how fans of the band were not too keen with those last three projects since the band's reunion. They all seem to work more in the stylings of bands like Paramore and Evanescence, and there's elements of indie rock at play as well. I think they definitely upped that factor, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing from a sonic standpoint, but it does feel like a safe zone for a band that has built its reputation on pushing boundaries over the years. But I think The Painful Truth finds them on their feet again with this element, working with some of that early raw energy while tapping successfully into sounds of previous efforts that may have missed the mark in a lot of ways. This album is produced by Dave Sitek, who is best known for his work as lead guitarist and producer for TV on the Radio, and his production with Yeah Yeah Yeahs as well, amongst many others. I mean, this guy's resume is like a mile long. And there's no doubt that his influence is felt from start to finish on this record, as he is credited as a writer on all of these tracks. With The Painful Truth, Skunk and Anansie have traded in the band's early signature sound of heavy nu metal guitars for a sound that's rooted in post-punk, with just the right amount of electronic, which I feel like they've always done, and raw punk power as well. There's a lot on this record that really reminds me of Depeche Mode in all the right ways. And there's more too. I would say throughout this record, they play with krautrock, disco, reggae, and a complementary level of balladry as well. There's also an element of pop at work on this record too, which might cause longtime fans of the band to scratch their heads the way that they did with some of those last efforts. But I think Dave helps the band to bring all of this together, and again, just makes the sound of this record work. And not that anything that I've said really matters to the likes of Skin or this band for that matter. But more so her, it's what I really admire about her as a frontwoman. The poignancy of her lyrics in this record are on point, especially with the opening track, An Artist is an Artist. It's a brilliant manifesto that highlights a topic that comes up frequently on this channel. And it's that artists must create for themselves. And she's not shy about expressing that the naysayers can piss off if they're not into it. She knows full well that the goal is not to please everyone. And I love that this band doesn't care, that they're out there to do their own thing. This is a message that leads the charge through a run of songs that feature incredible vocals and brazen wordplay that serves as proof that she's still got it and she's not going anywhere anytime soon. And I would say that with the help from Dave, the production features a score of balanced instrumentation that complements her performance wonderfully. I would say that my only bit of criticism with the compositions is that they lack an adventurous nature, the adventurous nature of the band's early work. Towards the album, you can feel that the songs are somewhat predictable in where they're going to go. There's with this in mind though, there's still a variety of Skin's vocal techniques, the balance of big soaring vocal hooks, beautiful melodies, and recitative rhythms that I think really compensate for that lack of adventurous. I really think that she helps pick that bar up quite a bit with her performance on this record. It opens up with An Artist is an Artist. A pulsating synth opens on its own before being joined by up-tempo drums and grinding bilateral guitar play. I love that in the headphones. A second guitar works in, taking the reins on the lead riff to join all of the fun here. The guitars drop as Skin enters, delivering a recitative vocal driven by the rhythm section of this outfit. And the intensity of the vocals pick up with the chorus, and those are complemented with light guitars and fuzzy droning synth textures. The second verse, it continues to employ more playful synths, and this song, it finishes with a big rockin' coda and frenzied instrumentation to cap off what is a really solid opener, in my opinion, for this record. Your second track is entitled This Is Not Your Life. You get an array of percussive elements that open with this synth that it sounds like a horn element. And, all this is quickly joined by funky bass and vocals that just carry a mean flow. The vocal hook in the title shifts the song into lighter atmospheric territory for the pre-chorus of the song, and with all of the percussion dropping out at that moment. And then for the chorus, the percussion is going to return to drive shimmering synths and pulsating bass. The second verse moves through the same process into the chorus, as does the third. And for your third track, they have called this one Shame. It is going to open with light pulsating bass and sparse electronic percussion that create this pensive mood. I love the way that this finds a great balance between darkness and light. Skin delivers a vulnerable, soulful vocal that takes off beautifully. I really love her performance on this track. And that vocal just soars through the chorus. Gets even bigger there. Love the drums that hit to start the second verse. And there's this droning synth that has an icy chime-like quality that works its way in. The bridge focuses on that incredible vocal with a bit of piano as the rest of the instrumentation builds back into the track. You get great guitar that lifts this track through the closing chorus and into your fourth song entitled Lost and Found. This track opens up with an a cappella vocal, another really powerful performance from Skin, and this simple staccato piano that it's so catchy, and I love the way it just breezes in on this track. You get mid-tempo drums that build in shortly after, and then they drop in the pre-chorus as the piano turns very light in its production before the song takes a brief grungy turn. I really like this moment in the song. It's going to shift into the second verse with a newfound gothic rock influence that they employ, with that brilliant piano working back in, and it provides a wonderful contrast on this track. The chorus is a great balance of gothic rock and soul, I would argue. It's very well done. A great guitar riff with a sharp tone takes us out in the coda, and leads us into our fifth song, Cheers. This one opens with a quick, simple count off, takes us into a bass-driven punk rock track. I really like the energy, the way that this track picks things up. And this track also features elements of post-punk and new wave as well. Guitars and swirling synths chime in and out, and the chorus goes for full-body texture with just the right amount of that pop influence that I mentioned. I really dig the vocal hook, the vocal melody on the hook, So Cheers, and the guitar behind it. Track descends into a bass-driven bridge before drums and other elements begin to build back in. And this is just a perfect example, in my opinion, of how to incorporate a pop element into punk rock. I hear a lot of bands where I just don't feel they do it well, and this is just a wonderful example of that. Your sixth song is entitled Should Have Been You. It opens with a big reggae influence and layered synths that are shooting, laser synths, that are just like shooting all over the place. There's a big influence of the Police on this track. You get smooth little bass lick with staccato guitar that ushers in a sharp vocal that borders on recitative, but it still employs great melody. Little drum roll shifts the track into alternative and punk rock territory, and I would say this is another example of a track that has just the right amount of pop that breaks through its surface. You get a bit of a breakdown with that reggae influence really taking hold, and a bit of vocals with those laser-like synths that are just firing all over the place at this point. And this track finishes with a big punk rock punch. I like the way that it closes out quite a bit. Your seventh song is entitled Animal, fades in on a tinny, vibrating synth with just a touch of bass. You get this electronic beat that works in with the arrangement, and it stays minimal to start. Skin delivers a soulful vocal that's equally seductive. I really love the dynamic here with her performance. Drums fall out in the pre-chorus and then build back in with a driving snare to lead into the chorus. Drums are big and spaced out. This is that kind of old school Skunk and Anansie that we like with those big drums. And you get these cold, icy synths that create this sinister atmosphere. It's almost like, honestly, it sounds cheesy, but it's almost like the transformation of the werewolf under the moon. And honestly, I feel like there's a bit of Lady Gaga at work on this thing as well. That pop influence, again, I go back to it. I think it's big on this record. Your eighth song is entitled Fell in Love with a Girl. You get this big a cappella vocal with some reverb to effect and a hook that calls to mind Blur's Girls and Boys. A soft tambourine works in on the second hook, or on the second go around, of the hook, before a drum roll ushers in a minimal and funky track that plays like Talking Heads almost on this one. I really love the influences driving this track. There's layered percussion while the bass and guitar play off each other with a little synth play in the backdrop as well. The chorus finds brighter energy driven by fuzzy bass and synths that have a fluttering shimmer. The synth play really comes to life in the third verse on this one and rides the wave of the chorus to finish, which, as I mentioned, this is a pretty common structural feature that are featured on most of these songs. Your penultimate track is called My Greatest Moment. You get these light staccato synths that create the framework for a second lead synth that just kind of jaunts around. Then a third ominous synth that it carries deep tone. And this is another example of them playing with that kind of like horn-like element as this track opens. This thing is a big electric industrial number. It's sinister and sludgy, and I love the way it comes together. The verse is minimal with the vocal and beat to start, but that horn-like synth plays in intermittently until the chorus hits and it takes control. The track follows the structure that every preceding song does, as I mentioned before, leading into your 10th track, Meltdown. Get this somber piano that opens and is soon joined by Skin's powerful vocals. A bit of simple bass works in to build the texture of the track. And then there's a little more piano that trickles in on this one towards the end of the first chorus. And I really enjoyed the way that element takes control of the track as it moves into the second verse. The second chorus features great harmonies and light droning synths as well. Kind of feels like the way that Trent Reznor closed the Downward Spiral with the song Hurt. Closing this thing out, this is a record that I think finds them, as I said, getting back into the stylings and the power energy of their early work. I would say that this is arguably the best album that they have released since reuniting about 15 years ago. I applaud them for this effort. It's in reading interviews, I know Skin talked about how it really was quite a process. She said almost painful, trying to decide what direction that the band wanted to steer their sound in. And as I stated, I think for the most part, despite there being a lot of elements that might seem foreign, especially in light of this band's early work, these are all influences that the band has talked about. You know, there's stylings that have influenced this band throughout their career. And so it's really cool to see them, you know, put those sounds to work more and to great effect, in my opinion. I would say welcome back after an almost 10-year break. I'm going to give this record a 7.7 out of 10, and I hope you all enjoy listening to this. I hope you find this review helpful as well. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help me blow this project up in 2025, and stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.